very happy to be invited by BLOK Art Space to do an exhibition here. It was over a year ago, and when we got the invitation, we thought about a topic that might be important to all of us. And us as Anna-Lena, Lars and I, we have a curatorial collective called Point Project in Berlin. And for us, it's mainly important to connect socio-political aspects with aesthetic art forms. And the topic for our exhibition was actually inspired by the protests of the Gezi Park, and we were wondering what happens to a city when nature is restricted, and what does it do to the people, and do people in general have a right to nature, and what happens if it's taken away, and what does it do to the urban landscape of a city. So we invited 7 artists from different countries, and we're very lucky that 3 of them are here, Lars and Serkan and Markus. And they all have different positions, obviously, and hello. Hey. And what we would like to do now is to just talk to all of them, and Ebru, who is we were very happy that she's joining us tonight, and to talk about the exhibition and their view on things. And to start maybe with an artist from the region, Serkan. Some of you know him already. He is a photographer. This is one of his pieces. And maybe it would be nice if you, as an Istanbul, could give us some insight on how you feel that the landscape is changing of the city, and how you feel about it.
Okay. Thanks a lot. First, to be here, all of you guys, and for the curatorial team and BLOK Art Space to invite me and take part in this very successful for me in this exhibition. And, just to know before how long we are going to speak, like do we have a kind of a
I think we should just keep it more like a dialogue. Okay. Also because we are like not such a huge group, so I think it's important that we just give also you guys a chance to ask questions. So that basically is an invitation for you to intervene at any time, and just see this rather as a dialogue rather than a presentation from our side. It's more about actually talking to you, because we traveled all the way from Berlin, but now we're finally here, so we're really happy to actually have the chance to talk to you guys. So.
Okay, so as the starting point from Gezi, which Anneli was mentioning, as I can speak about my work, which is directly related to Gezi, actually. So I can just speak about like the story of the work in a way, then we can have an idea about how it's been evaluated, and so at around 2011, all we had been experiencing that there was a tremendous change happening around the city, you know, like in the built environment, that it was really affecting our lives as citizens living in here. So as a photographer, at that time I was doing photography as more like a final production in a way. So as a photographer, I've been very curious about what's happening around the city. Why it is the periphery, maybe I need to open a parenthesis here, that periphery itself is the most, and let's say the entry point of the city. You know, the transformation and the expansion starts from the periphery. And the dynamics of the periphery and its social, political and ecological consequences are not very visible, first of all, but it is directly related to us as being here. So I started to have walks around the periphery of the town, and started to understand or investigate what is the landscape change due to this impact of this transformation. So what kind of places? Let's give an example. As all of us has an idea about the Istanbul city map, right? So it's okay. Yeah, maybe just to give a brief information that Istanbul is more populated around the coast of the Marmara. So the northern part of the city is mostly about like a green belt. So it's not like a typical European town in that sense, because generally, let's say, the European towns are mostly a city center and then expand like a circle, but Istanbul expansion is more like a line, because the northern side of the city is not suitable for the domestic need, right. And because of the wind, because of the land use and so on, so it's been more populated on the coast of the Marmara. So what I started to make, like walking around this line, the northern shore of the line, which is like 120 kilometers long, actually. Yeah, I didn't walk all of it, but
that would be a nice performative project.
yeah, it was kind of. Yeah, I walked most of it, let's say. I walked most of it. So what I found there is that. So what I found there is let's give a couple of subtitles. Is the of course this public housing project, first of all, as we all know, this issue of Turkey and other things, and the gated communities, and the destruction due to the big projects like the third airport project and the highway and the third bridge line, all we know, and so those are the built environment issues. But at the other hand, there are ecological consequences of these things, obviously, which are like quarries where they need to take this material out, and the excavation storage places where the excavation which are gathered from all this transformation to be stored somewhere in the city. So basically, I try to follow the steps of this construction thing plus the ecological consequences. So let's come to the first image. Actually, it was a series of like, let's say 30 images. You guys don't know also, actually, so it has a narrative. I didn't told you maybe before that. So the narrative starts from this image and ends with that image. So everything is in between, actually.
That's funny that we actually chose those.
Yeah. So everything is in between. So that's exactly. Also, in the chronological order of how I make the picture is that is the actually the first in the chronological order. Yes. Also, where I started to make the research, where I started to wanted to go closer to the city, come closer to the city as like a medieval castle, you know, like, and try to understand how the landscape changed due to these public housing projects, which you see some, and beside the housings, it seems like also you were referring to romanticism in the text, so it could be considered like a typical landscape image, you know, could be also a romanticized landscape in a way, because of the colors and the mood of the image itself. But then later, or maybe at the very beginning, you realize how the city approaches you because of the expansion of it. So that's how I started to make these images. So it was the first image that you come closer to the city, and then the steps of this construction issue, which I'm not going to speak about a lot here, but the other end is actually the final image of the whole process. So it is the excavation.
Yes.
So
which is very brutal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially compared to also just from the image itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say, why I started speaking about Gezi, those images produced is because of the curiosity and engagement of people to their right to the city.
Yes.
As I am a citizen from Istanbul, that was also my experience and, in a way, interpretation to this situation. So,
can I just ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Because I would just like to bring Ebru into the conversation here. Ebru also being from Istanbul, she's teaching at the Technical University Sociology, and is also a curator. And Ebru started to research also about this whole topic when we asked her to join in the conversation, because we were very interested in her opinion too. And these aspects about romanticism in image culture, like what green actually means, because our working title finally was No Green. So this was like the first idea that we sort of developed quite roughly, where we just said we feel like making an exhibition about what happens when there's no more green, you know. And Ebru, you have been researching on the subject what green actually as a symbolism means, both in art and also in sociology, right? Could you tell us a bit about that?
This exhibition inspired me to write a short piece, actually, which still I'm working on. So, thank you for letting me working on a new topic, actually. So, I will try to give you my ideas briefly. My first reaction was maybe to summarize it with a question: why do we call why do we associate the environmental movement with green? Because ecology has different colors and different tones of colors, and the emphasis given to the sight and vision should be questioned. That is my basic idea. So when I go deeper to the history of environmental movements and the prominence given to the sight, I found a book which is written in 1835, which really explains the romantic and the romanticization of sightseeing. The book is written by Wordsworth in 1835, and the title explains the topic clearly. The title of the book is A Guide Through the District of the Lakes in the North of England, with a description of the scenery and for the use of tourists and residents. So this sightseeing is associated for those who would have time and leisure time to enjoy the environment and nature. So I come back to this point because environmentalists, generally speaking, are considered as romantic. Because the brutality of environmental destruction is so harsh that sometimes environmental criticism can be considered very romantic. And since I am also having huge concerns about this, I have some other things to say about this bourgeoisie values and the association of ecological movement by emphasizing the green and the vision and sight. So when I come back to the exhibition, I happily saw that the exhibition unfolds the prominence of sight and give us multi-layered examples of artworks which do not only emphasize sight. For instance, this work. Here we see a contract. Here are some of the keywords that I've underlined. Maybe if I just read these keywords, maybe that would give an idea. Wasteland, dark clouds, melancholic aesthetic, dissolves as quickly as it appears, preventing to repeat itself, undermining importance and their eventual brutality, amorphous expansion, autonomy, responsibility, a new sensitivity towards all living forms that we share our environment with. This is once again related with not putting the human perception in front of our vision in this exhibition. I think Markus' work, I mean, I can talk about it for hours, I think. It's so multi-layered. Markus could also talk about it. Landscape turns out toxic, and representation of landscape turns out another topic. Representation as reality and aesthetic representation of negatively connotated toxic material. It is so multi-layered, so it is beyond vision, and it is beyond sight, and it is beyond one color, and it is beyond one object, including the coconut work. I'm really sorry that I mentioned it as coconut work, but it's just...
It is a good work.
And pixelated aesthetic, for instance, another keyword that I would like to emphasize, because it is another deconstruction of sight. Creating an alien environment, because that is the environmental destruction is basically doing, and the artworks in this exhibition is reversing that, or is challenging to reversing that mentality maybe. So these are some of the preliminary thoughts that I can share, and I can maybe talk about it later on in another paper or in another talk.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you said about the romanticism of environmental activists, because actually the feeling you get is that industrialization is always the future, and everything that is against it is actually backwards, where it's so much the opposite, right?
Well, environmentalists had that criticism in the 1960s, and the response was actually came with the tones of green. That is very interesting for me. Once again, they didn't leave the color green or the color. The color means in Latin to hide and to cover. So I ask, if ecological movement is associated with color, what exactly does color cover, hide, or conceal within environmental movement? So by using the color, we are actually hiding something within the environmental resistance. So what are we hiding? What are we covering that's why your work, because it's multi-layered, so each time we unfold one layer and we reveal one fact one after another. And the other works are having this kind of strategy as well. I really liked your curatorial approach with these works.
Yeah, what you're saying is actually quite interesting in regards to Markus' work, as you mentioned it, because in his work, especially in Markus' works, a lot with the impact that nuclear power, do you say that? Radiation, energy?
In a way, so, yeah, or contaminations that are probably sensorically not approachable.
Something that is actually hidden, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That you cannot see it all and how this...
Or hear it, or... I mean, I think that's... Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment or finish your question, or you...
No, I was just making an allusion to your work.
I just wanted to say something maybe about what is hidden about the human being inside the shades of green or shades of grey or however you want. I made that reference now very brutally and very, because we are animals as well, so we are egoistic and we try to be imperialistic on our planet, and we decided as a species to mostly align ourselves in a way with the other species in a symbiotic way, so more in a parasitic or destructive way, which is actually what is also maybe hidden in the people that are actually from the green movement and whatever. I mean, nobody can ever claim that he's always green or can interact with the world and in his life with his needs that are also preconditioned by society, because you see the world and you consume the world in the way you're actually conditioned in your society. So you always have a blind spot, and maybe that's the hidden thing, that you cannot be out of yourself and just relate to the world as a fully embracing, non-patronizing entity that works with that spaceship we are all living on in a way that heightens the awareness and responsibility of all others. And that's a crucial point, I think. Yeah.
I mean, what we don't get around somehow is that this is an extremely emotional topic. So no matter from what side you touch it, it will always be emotional because everybody is affected by the change of environment. So no matter if you're an environmentalist or if you're a climate change denier, which exists too, we are all affected by it. And I think that was also striking for us to, we only saw it in the media and Berlin when we heard about what was happening with the Gezi Park protests. Of course, we were like wondering, like, why do people freak out so much about a couple of trees? Like, how can this be like a civil movement just because somebody wants to remove a little park, you know? So for us, coming from outside, it seemed like, well, we didn't really understand it. And through the dialogue, we found out that people got really emotional about this. And I think this is also something that is really important about your work, because I mean, you went outside, but what interests me a lot is what was your actually personal motivation to do this? I mean, to do this series, because this is not your only photographic series concerned with nature or with the change of nature. But
as you were telling, during that kind of, let's say, an uprising situation, actually, your artistic motivation gets below than your activist motivation. Let's say that your activist motivation overcomes than your artistic motivation, let's say.
Although that can also be somehow the same, right?
Yeah, there is no need to distinguish each other, but in a way, as you were speaking about this emotional situation, so most of those works are motivated from this activist side, let's say, because what I wanted to make as like to have to create an accessibility for people to have at least an idea about what's happening around. And because though there were a lot of factual things had been known, at least known by the people, but not really accessible. So because of that, then we can start about speaking about what's the role of the art and blah blah, but let's leave it out because of the Gezi, let's say, spirit in a way. So what I wanted to emphasize is engagement about that. So then this carried me to make a walking trail, which I'm not going to speak about here, but what I wanted to emphasize is this engagement, you know. So during this kind of uprising situation, people want to engage and want to be a part of like a physical engagement. So what I wanted to make is kind of a representation of this engagement in a way. So
I think what I feel like looking from far, when you feel like a city is changing so much and something is taken away from you that you feel you need, that you don't have a voice really to say anything about it, or that voice is also taken away from you. And I was wondering, for you as an artist doing a project like this, where you're actually capturing the change, do you feel that gives you back a certain voice to utter your opinion about it?
That's one thing, but again I wanted to more emphasize is the fact that if it gives accessibility for people, that's much more important for me. That was much more important.
But did you feel that people did not know about it that much?
That doesn't mean they don't know about that much, but the figures wasn't, the facts was not accessible that much, and also people at that time did not know that the change, this brutal change and its impact was not that close to the city, and that means that was not that close to their lives being in the city. So that was a gap between this situation and their presence in the city. So that was I wanted to emphasize. I mean, it was not somewhere out of the not very far away from you. Yeah. So, and it's very related of your presence of being in the city. You know, it is a thing that we all create to be living in the city center. You know, so that was the main motivation.
But the landscape outside, like you picture there, it's that mainly like farming landscape?
No. It was.
Or is it wild forest?
Very much variated.
Okay.
So industrial zones, mining areas, semi-agricultural places, big blocks of constructions, and so on. So that's also again very much related to be in the city center, to live in the city center. So then it went out from the representation to the physical and bodily, tangible experience of by walking over there. So.
I would be interested, especially because you talked about representation, and obviously this is a subject that all artists engage with, because you have a subject, political or environmental or whatever, and then you have to wrap it in an artistic concept, and you have to somehow communicate it in a way that it suits not only an opinion but also an aesthetic language which is, I think, for many artists a big dilemma to find a path through this, because you're not a journalist, you're not just writing on paper.